Hey guys, my name is Chantel. Welcome back to my channel and thanks for hanging out with me today. So today we are here to talk about Idolish7 episode 7 of season 2. Oh boy, you guys, I have so much to say. Like so much. This episode was I thought last week's episode was a lot. This week, nah man, this week was a lot too. And I am scared to see what happens in next week's episode because of the way that it ended. Just no. Anyways, let's just take it back a little bit and let's start from the beginning, shall we? So this episode basically starts off with clearly showing us that Mitsuki is obviously still very much upset over what happened in last week's episode, and Nagi is trying to get to the bottom of things. He immediately notices that there is something obviously is wrong with Mitsuki, and he tries to get Mitsuki to open up, and he pretty much just pushes him away. And clearly the rest of Idolish7 also sees this as we get through the rest of the episode. They see it. They know there's something up with Mitsuki, but no one seems to want to approach him or talk to him or know how to talk to him. Except for Nagi. Nagi, you know, he doesn't really have too much of a plan. He just kind of goes in, and that's just the type of character that he is. He's always very much considerate. Not saying that like the other boys aren't considerate, but he's the one that I feel like worries the most about Mitsuki. Like these two are always together and I feel like they're always there for one another. Out of anybody, Nagi would definitely be the one that he would open up to the most. And Nagi's trying very much so to get him to open up and tell him like what's wrong. And it sucks because you want Mitsuki to open up to Nagi, and he's, you know, obviously pushing him away. And this in turn makes Nagi a little sad, which makes me sad. And throughout the whole episode, I have to say I was really hoping that Mitsuki would eventually open up to Nagi, which, you know, he does at the end of the episode, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I guess the next thing that I want to move on to talk about for now is Iori and Riku. So Riku, he is acting very awkward with Iori. He doesn't know how to interact with him, and I love how immediately Iori knows exactly what's going on. Like he didn't have to like really know. It's just the way that Riku approached Iori that he immediately was like, my gosh, like he immediately he was just like, I knew this was gonna happen. I knew it. And I feel really bad for Iori because like Iori wants to help Riku and like show him, you know, like he's the best one that sings and he's the one that wants to, you know, hear him sing again. But it's a little bit hard because Riku's trying really hard to avoid Iori. Like it's really awkward. And at the same time, it sucks. Like, I feel like at this point, neither of them know what to do or how to interact with one another or what to say in this situation, because clearly they know what's happening and what they're seeing on social media. It's so awkward, though, between the two that when they have like this little group meeting, they are trying to like arrange something for the show, and Iori suggests like maybe we should do it this way, and Riku is just like what are you doing? And Iori's just like, well, what do you want me to do? Like say something. It's just like I'm really glad that Yamato like steps in, which I gotta say in this whole episode Yamato really stepped it up. Like he was just amazing in this episode, and this is like one of the first things that we saw with him. He tries to, you know, mend the situation in the best way possible. At the moment he's trying to like make sure like nothing's too awkward, nothing's too like weird at the moment, even though he notices like the atmosphere and the air is just like very tense and weird and awkward, and he notices there's something wrong with Mitsuki, and he's trying to liven things up. And there's at one point where he's like, you know, just don't mind what everyone says, like none of that matters. He has really good intentions, but you know, it's one thing to say it to somebody, but the person that you're trying to say it to, they have to like accept what they're hearing. Like it's just really hard, especially for Mitsuki. Like Mitsuki, my poor boy. I just want to give him a hug. Mitsuki clearly was not even paying attention during the meeting and stuff, so he was just kind of like zoning out. And you know, it's fair, he's a little bit upset over what happened, and he's just lost. And like I said, Yamato is really trying really hard to, you know, patch things up the best way that he can. There's a moment later on in the episode, I think this is when he's talking to Sogo, where he talks about the situation. He's like, man, like everything is just really weird and awkward, and Mitsuki's usually the one to lighten up the mood and cheer everyone up, and right now when we need it the most, he's not in the best position right now. Like there's something wrong, and it's just like like Mitsuki has like such a huge effect, and I really wish that he could see that, but clearly at the moment right now in this time he doesn't see how important he is to the group. And it sucks because it's always just like those negative people, those things that you see or hear that get to you the most over the positive ones. And sometimes it's really hard to get over those negative or like just push them aside. It's hard because they do take a really huge effect. And we see that throughout this whole episode. We see like the effects of what social media does and what, you know, the fan base does, as well as like how your comment can affect someone so much, which goes into the next topic that I want to talk about in this episode. So Idolish7 has like this little concert, and it's after the concert that we get like this moment with the fans, which I always really like these moments, but this moment was absolute crap. I did not like this moment because the fans, and it's like I'm gonna assume they were Iori's fans because they were like gushing about him and everything, and they were like, oh my gosh, like Idolish7 has been doing so much better now that Iori is like center, and like they're speaking out so loud, and I'm just like I'm listening to them, and I'm just like, this is not good. And that's when like this other group of girls like butts in, not necessarily like butts in, but they start speaking out loud too. They're like, man, Iori's fans are so rude. And I'm just like, oh no, here we go. And that's when they start like fighting, and I hate this part in like this little part where Iori's fans said, oh, they're just jealous because he's way better and he's getting more popularity. I'm like, no. I've never wanted to throw hands so bad. I was so upset over that comment. I was just like, we are not going there. Like, this is literally just the bad side of the fandom and that we're seeing. And it sucks because there's also like this other group of girls that are like, I hate this. I don't like the fighting. Like, why is this happening? This is like one of the moments that really stuck to me the most, because it also like we get to see these girls again later on, like towards the end of the episode, which I'll talk about later. But one of the things that I kind of like about this episode is just it's very realistic, because with the whole thing with social media and the fans, which it's crazy because you see this all the time in fandoms, like whatever fandom you're in, whether it be with like an artist that you really love, or like with anime, a show, anything. Like there's always gonna be those group of fans, like the negative ones that are always the loudest, and sometimes those negative ones always drown out the positive. And clearly these girls in Idolish7 don't know how it's gonna affect the boys or somebody. It sucks because even like the group of girls that are just watching all of this happening and saying like, I don't like how this is going, like they're being affected too. So it's my gosh, like this whole side of the fandom, like it's so stupid, but it happens so often, and it's just so wild to see it in an anime, you know? Like it's just kind of wild, because this is like the part of the fandom that I always like don't like, where it's always like these negative, or the ones that are like, oh, my person's better than yours and stuff like that. And I always see this again, I gotta bring Taylor Swift because like she's my girl. I love her so much, but I see this a lot with Taylor. Like there's always some, like, no offense to the Taylor Swift fans, but there's always a few rotten apples where they're like, oh, Taylor, you're just jealous because Taylor is better, or blah, blah, blah. Or like, it's just like, stop. Again, not with just music and artists. You see this with anime. I see this a lot with Haikyuu, where they're fighting over boys or ships, and it's just like, can't we just stop it. I'm just here to have fun, you know? I'm just here to have fun and chill. Speaking of the fans, there's also this moment where we get with Yamato and Sogo, and they sit down and talk to each other, and they're talking about like some things, and then the whole fan thing like pops up because Sogo is looking on social media. Oh, this hits so hard because Sogo starts talking about how horrible it is because he's like, Riku and Iori's fans are fighting with each other, and that's when they're like, this is probably why they're acting really, really weird at the moment. They're looking through the Twitter, and just seeing it and then seeing like what Sogo is reading just blows my mind, because then you see like the and they're tweeting at the freaking like official Twitter page, and I'm just like, but at the same time I'm like, yep, that's pretty accurate, because there are fans like that where they will legit tweet at the person and say like these horrible things. It just blows my mind that there are people out there that can say horrible things or like fight with one another like this, and that's just how it is on social media, right? That's one of the bad things about social media and being a celebrity, an idol, you know, whatever it is. You're always gonna have like this bad side where there's just like a few bad apples, and we're starting to see the effects of it in Idolish7. Clearly it's affecting our boys in so many ways, to the point where like now it's clearly affecting the group, where they don't even know what to do, how to interact, how to help one another. And even Sogo is like saying, you know, I feel completely helpless. Like this feels a lot like, you know, like my past with like his relative, and he wants to help Iori and Riku in some way, but it's like, how do you help them? Like the only ones that can help them are themselves. Riku and Iori have to figure this out and like come to terms and like talk to each other and like try to figure something out. But it also takes a lot of mental strength for Riku, because Riku is the one clearly being the most affected out of both Iori and Riku. But like I said, at the same time, they need to get together and talk it out. And Riku needs to know that we all love him and that it's gonna be okay, baby boy. I promise. Which, after they like stop talking about Iori and Riku, they dive into talking about Mitsuki and his situation. And Sogo's just like, I don't understand what's wrong with Mitsuki. Like, what's happening? Like, he's getting recognition from the people in the industry. And that's when Yamato steps in. He's just like, yeah, but that's not the recognition that he wants. He wants it from the fans. And that's when Sogo's just like, oh. I feel like this moment really made me appreciate Yamato a lot, because he's clearly observing everything around him. And he's seeing everything, and he clearly knows like what's happening or what's like on everyone's minds. He talks about like how Mitsuki's situation is a little bit hard where he's emceeing. You know, being an MC, you have to like give like equal amounts of spotlight and all this stuff, and like he tries to explain like how difficult it is and how, you know, sometimes it can go underappreciated by a lot of people. And he's just like, you know, there's bound to be fans out there that would complain because they want more out of like certain boys. And then Sogo's like, why don't you tell it to Mitsuki? And he's just like, well, you know, Mitsuki's a little bit more like, he has pride, and it seems like he kind of understands Mitsuki, and he doesn't want to really overstep like his boundaries. But at the same time, I'm like, Yamato, yes, please tell him this. Like, at least try to talk to him, or I don't know. But at the same time, you know, Mitsuki can also decide whether or not he wants to hear this or not. So it's a tough situation. And since we're still on the topic of Yamato, he tries to mend things between Sogo and Tamaki. So he takes Tamaki out to ramen, and he talks over with him, and he's saying like all these really nice things, and he's like, oh yeah, Sogo said that you're great and he admires you. And he's like, you know, he might be a little hard on you, but that's because he cares. And I was like, hold up, Sogo never said any of this, unless like, you know, he said it like off camera, like where we didn't see it, like us, the audience. But then we get like this moment where Yamato is like, sorry Tamaki, but I have to do this for the sake of, you know, the group, because if Mezzo goes down, I don't know how we're gonna recover from this. And I'm just like, I really hope that this doesn't come back to bite Yamato in the ass, because like if Tamaki finds out that this wasn't true or something happens, it's gonna like not be great. Again, it scares me to think that if something goes horribly wrong, like it's like I don't want to think about it, but I feel like that's probably where we're gonna head into, where Tamaki finds out that this was all lies, and there's probably a different reason why Sogo does this, and it's just and then he's gonna be mad at Yamato, and it's just like, no. Like, I get that he did it for the sake of the group, but at the same time, like, it has consequences. So we don't know how it's gonna turn out, and again, I'm scared to see like the outcome of it if it does bite him back in the ass. But because of Yamato stepping in, Tamaki starts acting a little bit differently around Sogo, especially when they're like, as they appear as a guest on the show. Tamaki is acting completely different. He's acting super polite, and Sogo, I love his expression because he's like completely just lost. Sogo gets all excited and happy, and he's just like, Tamaki, like, this is great. Like, he's just so happy, and then Tamaki's like so happy too because he's getting praised by Sogo, and it's just so cute. But then he like mentions his sister, and I'm like, oh no, because Tamaki's like, yeah, you know, like, thanks for like asking about my sister, you know, I really appreciate that. And I'm like, oh no, it's like, Sogo, you better come clean now, please. I know this is gonna bite Sogo back in the butt, and it's gonna hurt to see. I'm scared to see the outcome. I really hope, I guess Sogo wants to make sure, because like, for context, Sogo asked a picture of if, you know, Tamaki had a picture of his sister, and he's like, no, I don't have one, otherwise I would have showed you. And Sogo like had asked for that, and that's why Tamaki's thanking him now. Like, I get that Sogo probably wants to double check and make sure that it's her before he says anything or figures out what he wants to do with what happened. And it's obviously still on his mind, and he obviously knows that he probably should tell Tamaki about this because it could be his sister, which obviously we know that it's his sister. I just don't want it to ruin the relationship that Tamaki and Sogo have, and so I'm hoping Sogo makes the right call and tells him about this situation. Just things are going so good with them, and I'm scared that it's gonna crash and burn any minute. Like, I'm so scared. And speaking of things that crashed and burned, so let's talk about the like late night show that Idolish7 has with Mitsuki, which is called like Lovely Night with You. So, oh my gosh, clearly Mitsuki is still in shambles over what happened, over what he overheard, because he's overthinking it the whole time he's trying to MC, and he's just like, why aren't you guys talking more? Why aren't you guys doing this? Like, please, like, someone step in. He's like freaking out so badly, and like, I felt so bad for Mitsuki, and I also wanted to, like, the other boys to be like, you know, someone please notice this and step in, which I'm sure they notice it, and they're probably like, what's going on with Mitsuki? But I'm just like, it's so bad to the point where, like, the staff is talking, they're like, why was Mitsuki acting weird? Why was he off? You know, if he doesn't talk, like, the other members don't talk as freely and openly, and it's just like, So clearly, like, Mitsuki has his role, he has a part, he's important, but he doesn't see that right now. It's just clouded by all this negative stuff that he overheard, and it's just, he's trying to please the fans, and it's just like, Mitsuki, no, like, this poor boy. And that's when we get this moment between him and Nagi, where Nagi is like trying really hard to get him to open up, to the point where he's just like, he's not gonna let him go. He's just like, no, please tell me, like, don't push me away, it makes me sad. And then finally, Mitsuki opens up. You know, I'm sorry about how things happened. I promise I'll be able to change and do better. And that's when he's like, but I don't know how to change and do better. Like, what do I do? What's my role? I don't want the people that love you guys to hate me. And it's just, he starts crying, and I'm just like, no. And then the music, the soundtrack in the background, like, it just, it was so hard to watch this moment, just seeing Mitsuki break down. And just like pouring out all his feelings hurt so bad. And oh my gosh, you guys, when Nagi is like, who did this to you? Who hurt you? Like, who could be this cruel? And he's like, nobody. And I'm just like, ah! Like, it's so hard to watch. And clearly Nagi's trying to help in any way that he can. And this is something that Mitsuki has to fight on his own. He has to overcome this by himself, because this is something more like mentally. I just hope Mitsuki learns that, you know, you can't really please everybody. It comes with being an idol. I hope he realizes that it's okay to not be liked by the people that love the group. Like, it's fine. Like, there's always gonna be those bad apples, but it's always those that care about you the most that are way more important. So I hope that he sees that his fans really do care about him and love him so much, and they're gonna be there for him, as well as the members of Idolish7. So I really hope Mitsuki recovers from this. I don't like seeing him sad and break down like that. That was really hard to watch. Which leads into the last and final thing that I want to talk about. So, at the end of the credits, we get this moment with the group of girls that we saw that didn't like the fans fighting. So they're looking at the billboard and they start talking with each other and they're like, I hate this. I hate what's happening with Idolish7. They're fully aware of what's happening in the fandom. They're like, the fans are being incredibly mean to Mitsuki. And I'm like, thank you. Someone finally mentions Mitsuki. And these girls clearly appreciate what Mitsuki's doing. They're like, they don't recognize how hard he's working. And I'm like, girl, yes, say it louder for the people in the back, please. And they talk about Riku and Iori, like the whole situation between them too. And they're like, I hope that they haven't seen all this negative stuff. And I'm like, oh girls, if only you knew how much this is destroying our boys. If only they knew. And they just want them to be okay at the end of the day. Like, those are true fans, I have to say. Like, those are true fans, especially if they're concerned over like the negative stuff and how it's gonna affect them. Like, you know that they care for the boys very, very much so. So I appreciate these girls and I'm glad that they're here. And one of the things that kind of hit really hard was that they acknowledged that all of this started happening as soon as Iori became center. And I'm like, as soon as they said that, I'm like, oh no, I bet you there's gonna be fans that are gonna blame Iori for all of this happening. But I guess I'll see what happens. But I'm just scared that eventually the fans are gonna turn against Iori, and I don't want that. I really don't, because the fandom is clearly being very, very vicious and mean and harsh, and like it sucks. Which, again, like I said last week's video, you have to be careful of what you say online because you never know how it's gonna affect someone. Yes, maybe like with YouTubers, celebrities, idols, everything, they always say, oh, but they have to have this thick skin if they wanted to be in this. Oh, this is part of the job. They have to deal with it. Like, no, at the end of the day, they're still human beings. They have feelings. So you have to be careful of what you say on the internet because you never know how it's gonna affect them. My little piece of advice is, if there's something mean that you're gonna say, think about like what you're typing, and if someone were to say that to you, like, how would you feel? Not great, I assume. Like, just be nice. That's all I can say, is just be nice to each other, please. Just spread positivity. No more negative. Anyway, so like the group of girls, like, even though like the whole conversation becomes a little bit sad, they end up like cheering themselves up by talking about the Zero Arena concert thing. They basically mentioned the posters. They're like, oh my gosh, the posters are so cool. And we see the posters across, which we do see at the end of the credits. We see them before, and then as soon as the girls point them out, we see Rivale's poster. It was spray painted, and I don't like how this is going. I knew it. You guys, I knew this was gonna happen, and now we're here. Rivale is getting backlash for covering Zero's song. Like, I know this was gonna happen, and I just hope Rivale's okay. Because like I said, it's one thing to be mentally prepared for, but it's another to experience it, and now they're experiencing it clearly. Like, it's starting, and I'm scared. I'm scared. I am terrified to see what's gonna happen, how this is gonna affect them, and just, yeah, I don't know what else to say. So I think I'm gonna end my thoughts here. That is all I have to say for this week's Idolish7 episode. I hope you guys liked hearing my thoughts. So I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy out there, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!